shocking body cam video released tonight by the San Diego Sheriff's Department. It shows a deputy on the brink of death after being exposed to fentanyl.
All over the US, cops are overdosing after breathing in or touching fentanyl. The footage is harrowing, but thankfully there are dozens of news reports bringing light to this terrible scourge. And in April last year, Florida brought in laws that make it a felony to expose a first responder to fentanyl. Fentanyl is a cop killer. But there's a problem with this story. Scientists say it's nonsense. The truth is, breathing in fentanyl or getting it on your skin simply won't have any effect. So it's doubtful that any of these cops have been poisoned. So are they lying, suffering some collective delusion, or is something else going on? Fentanyl is an opioid that's about 50 times more potent than heroin. It was synthesized in 1959 and has long been safely used in a clinical setting. But recently it's become more common on the illicit market. Because fentanyl is so powerful, illicit drug manufacturers mix some in with other drugs to save money. Fentanyl has also made its way into the drug market in counterfeit pills made to resemble other drugs like OxyContin. Pushing fentanyl out to unsuspecting drug users is a big problem. It's so strong that if you accidentally consume fentanyl, it can be really easy to overdose. In a clinical setting, there's quality control when a drug is manufactured, dosages are carefully measured, and professionals are able to monitor a patient throughout treatment. So although fentanyl is widely used, you don't really see fentanyl poisoning in hospitals. When people are overprescribed opioids to take at home, that can be dangerous. And when it comes to illicit drugs, they have poor quality control, the user might not know what's in it and how strong it is, and they may be afraid to get medical help. All of these problems could be mitigated if we legalized and regulated the supply of opioids, but that's a topic for another video. Drug lords aren't aiming to kill their customers. They're not fools, but they are capitalists, which is worse. Fentanyl is so powerful in such small doses that the economics are irresistible, so they're taking the risk and cutting their product. The results are deadly. The US Center for Disease Control estimates that 74,702 people died in the US from synthetic opioid overdoses in 2023. This is primarily fentanyl. Let's look at some news reports of police supposedly overdosing on fentanyl. In Chelsea, police found several men in a van apparently overdosing and revived them with the drug Naloxone. More on that later. The police say they found powder in the van, cocaine laced with fentanyl. Then the news report says this.
3 Chelsea police officers were also taken to the hospital for symptoms that appear to be consistent with fentanyl exposure, according to the police chief.
Lightheaded, dizzy. This happened when they got back to the station. I believe one of them may have passed out.
The Walpole police chief says it's not only a difficult situation for all first responders, but a frightening one.
But if it is airborne and it's disturbed in any way and it becomes airborne, then the officers can still ingest it or breathe it in through their nose, and then now they're subjected to it.
What they're describing here is not possible. Fentanyl doesn't become airborne like this, so those police could not have been affected by fentanyl this way. In Bartlesville, we have this example.
The power of even the smallest touch of fentanyl shown in this video. Watch as a Bartlesville police officer wearing protective gloves is packing up drug evidence believed to be laced with fentanyl when he slowly starts to collapse.
Becoming ill, lightheaded, and actually basically passed out or fell.
And in San Diego, Fox News tells us that an officer was on the brink of death saved by his partner. Since they weren't beating up a black man, their body cameras were on, giving us this footage.
Yeah, it's a powder.
Could be cocaine or fentanyl.
A couple seconds later, he took some steps back and he collapsed. I ran over to him and I grabbed him and he was OD'ing.
I'm Deputy David Five-Eye and I almost died of fentanyl overdose.
Here's one from Florida.
You get a warrant?
Narcan. Officer Courtney Bannock later went on to TV to say,
if I didn't have backup there, I wouldn't be here today.
And here's another one from Florida.
My hands are really shaky.
It's alright.
He was testing drugs and fell out. He walked over, said he's lightheaded, and basically passed out. Okay. Hey, partner. What happened? You just had it all? I was testing marijuana. He didn't go all the way down. We sat down. I tested that. I tested a white substance. Okay. As I put it in the test kit, I got lightheaded.
This isn't an exhaustive list, but I think you get the picture. The police are saying that fentanyl is so dangerous that even being in the same room as it could kill you. But scientists, doctors, and other nerds disagree. Let's look at a statement from the American College of Medical Toxicology and American Academy of Clinical Toxicology. What would they know? They say the risk of clinically significant exposure to emergency responders is extremely low. To date, we have not seen reports of emergency responders developing signs or symptoms consistent with opioid toxicity from incidental contact with opioids. And for opioid toxicity to occur, the drug must enter the blood and brain from the environment. Toxicity cannot occur from simply being in proximity to the drug. You can absorb fentanyl from a specially designed patch which delivers the drug at a constant rate over 72 hours, but just touching the powder won't do anything. If you want to learn more, you can read article links that I put in the description, and you might like this explainer from Ryan Marino, an emergency doctor specialising in toxicology. He makes the good point that if fentanyl could be so easily absorbed through the skin, nobody would bother injecting it. Medical professionals handle fentanyl all the time without any danger. Marino is one of a number of physicians running WTF Fentanyl, or What the Fentanyl, a great website that explains the issue and links to further evidence. So you won't absorb fentanyl simply by touching it. There are also no confirmed cases of fentanyl poisoning by breathing it in. Let's return to that San Diego example. While Fox News took the police at their word, Inside Edition actually did some journalism.
I'm Deputy David Fivey, and I almost died of a fentanyl overdose.
But now the video is being met with skepticism by some medical experts who say it is impossible to overdose on fentanyl simply through airborne exposure.
I can tell you with essentially 100% with surety that this was not fentanyl poisoning. When people get fentanyl poisoned, they don't just collapse like that. And not moments after an exposure.
He says the deputy's reaction was likely caused by stress, not the drug itself.
Experts agree airborne fentanyl exposure just isn't a thing. The only possible exception to this is the Moscow theatre siege in 2002. Chechen rebels stormed a theatre and took over 900 hostages. Russian security forces surrounded the building and pumped it full of sleeping gas, which may have contained fentanyl, but we don't really know. At least 132 hostages died, with most of those deaths being attributed to the gas. So, if it is possible for somebody to die from airborne fentanyl, it won't be a cop who breathes in some powder, it will be a hostage the cop kills instead of rescuing. These fentanyl myths aren't just confined to the US. Here in Australia, we love copying yank nonsense. Alex Caruana, head of the Australian Federal Police Association, has been in the media pushing for more resources to stop fentanyl. He claims it's a deadly risk to police because it's well known that when fentanyl powder becomes airborne, people react to it differently. And so you might only need to inhale a very small amount, I'm talking much less than a gram, for it to be lethal to you. Next, we'll talk about why the police are behaving this way. But before we move on, this is Naloxone. In some of the videos, you'll have seen the police refer to it as Narcan, the brand name, and what it does is it reverses an opioid overdose. If you give it to somebody who hasn't had opioids, luckily for the police, it doesn't have any serious side effects, so it's a good precaution to take. If you or somebody that you know uses illicit drugs, then you might not know what's in them, and having this on hand could save a life. In New South Wales, where I live, there's a program where you can get it for free from a lot of pharmacies, and you might have something similar where you live. Okay, back to the cops who weren't actually overdosing. When these officers appear to be poisoned, is it lying or delusion? I should be clear here that I'm not accusing any individual cop of lying. Don't sue me. Even if these aren't examples of fentanyl poisoning, there could be something real happening to these cops. It's possible they're overdosing on something else, but there's no evidence of that, and it just doesn't look like an opioid overdose. Some of the police in these incidents breathe rapidly and appear panicked, when a dose of fentanyl would have the exact opposite effect. Instead of fentanyl, these symptoms match a panic attack. If you've ever had a panic attack, you know how serious it feels. As well as the intense fear and confusion, You can suffer physical symptoms like a rapid heartbeat, chest pain, sweating, and shortness of breath. It's awful, and it matches the symptoms police exhibit. It could be the opposite of a placebo, the nocebo effect. Just as taking a fake medicine can have positive effects if the subject believes that it will work, the reverse can happen. If you think taking a drug will have a negative effect, it can, like these false overdoses. The nocebo effect might explain what's happening on an individual level, but why has it spread? And why are the symptoms so similar across cases? One theory is that this is a mass psychogenic illness. Natalie Shaw puts forward a good case for this in The New Republic, where she calls it a mass sociogenic illness, or you might know it as mass hysteria. But the word hysteria has a pretty ugly history, so we'll stick with mass psychogenic illness, even though it's a mouthful. Actually, let's just say MPI. To quote my good friend Wikipedia, MPI involves the spread of illness symptoms through a population where there is no infectious agent responsible for contagion. It is the rapid spread of illness signs and symptoms affecting members of a cohesive group, originating from a nervous system disturbance involving excitation, loss, or alteration of function, whereby physical complaints that are exhibited unconsciously have no corresponding organic causes that are known. Some famous incidents that were probably MPIs include the dancing plague of 1518, where hundreds of people in Strasbourg danced uncontrollably for weeks, or Havana syndrome, where US government officials claimed that their headaches, their insomnia, and cognitive issues are being caused by a secret science fiction energy weapon in control of a foreign government, probably the Cubans or the Russians. The evidence hasn't borne that one out. An article in the International Journal of Drug Policy by Brandon Del Pozo, Josiah D. Rich, and Jennifer J. Carroll rejects the police view that these are genuine overdoses, and instead argues that these incidents are part of a culture-bound syndrome. You can think of a culture-bound syndrome as like an MPI, but it plays down references to mental illness that macho cops might reject. The article says of such a diagnosis, it would provide patients influenced by pervasive stigma against psychological distress in public safety professions the means to reject a panic attack diagnosis with a valid and meaningful framework for articulating their experiences. The exact diagnostic criteria of a fentanyl-related culture-bound syndrome haven't been worked out, but the article argues that developing this could help with the abundance of disinformation about fentanyl poisoning. So we've got an idea of how to categorise these false beliefs, but why do they persist? Although medical experts and some journalists have been debunking the myth for years, right-wing and local media has fueled the flame. And it's not just the news. Skip Intro has a great video about the cop shows that propagate this fentanyl myth. This explains why even some non-police officers seem to believe they are overdosing, but it is mostly cops. So why has this taken hold mostly with the police? Why not other jobs like firefighters or paramedics? MPIs don't affect random people, they affect members of a cohesive group, like the police. But an alternative answer is, the police are just lying. I know it's not nice to call the police liars, but for the moment, let's pay the police the same respect that they give to suspects, who are always assumed to be lying. Now sit down, because this might shock you, but police lie. They lie all the time. Police lie to protect themselves or their colleagues from punishment, the blue code of silence. Police routinely lie in court to convict people. It's so common it has a name, tester lying, coined by the cops themselves. Police lie in interrogations, pretending they have evidence that doesn't exist in order to elicit false confessions and guilty pleas. Or police plant evidence. In the US, police lied about the killings of black people that sparked uprisings in 2020. When Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, the Minneapolis Police Department falsely claimed he had resisted arrest. When police entered Breonna Taylor's apartment, shot and killed her, they had a warrant which falsely claimed they had evidence from a postal inspector that there was suspected drug activity. The initial incident report from the police claimed that Taylor had no injuries when in fact she had been shot and killed, and the police claimed none of the officers involved had body cameras. Another lie. Police don't just lie to send you to prison or justify shootings, but over the most petty things. Philip Powell made the news after claiming that a McDonald's employee had tampered with his burger and taken a bite out of it, before admitting that he had done that himself. Officer William Darling also went to McDonald's and claimed that the workers wrote "effing pig" on his cup, and it turned out that he'd done that himself too. In New York, the police union claimed that 3 officers had been deliberately poisoned at Shake Shack, which of course never happened. Those food tampering lies came in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement, stories intended to elicit sympathy for the police. Whether it's lying about a suspect having a gun or spitting in a cop's food, the lies aren't random. They're to give police power. A relevant example of lying for our topic is Sacramento County Sheriff's Deputy Marvin Morales. He really did overdose on fentanyl in 2023, and his colleagues initially believed it was an inadvertent fentanyl exposure, like the other cases we've discussed. But it turned out that Morales had stolen evidence, a pipe that he believed contained methamphetamine, and he smoked it in the bathroom at work. It turned out to be laced with fentanyl, and he needed to be revived with Naloxone. Morales changed his story throughout the investigation, and it turned out that this wasn't the first time he ingested drugs seized while on duty. It's clear though that most of these incidents don't involve actual fentanyl poisoning. The distinction between lying and delusion might not be so simple. There could be some motivated reasoning going on. The fentanyl myth is different to a nervous tic or dancing because this myth is a narrative that serves the interests of the police. It justifies putting more money into the war on drugs, and it makes the cops' job look so dangerous and heroic that they can't be questioned. I think just calling it a delusion or MPI lets cops off the hook. It denies their agency and their interest in telling this particular lie.
Another layer to the opioid epidemic, and an eye-opening to what these men and women behind the badge have to deal with.
Police act like their job is uniquely perilous and noble. It's a shield against any criticism of the violence that they inflict, because apparently the criminal masses are so much worse. They express their ideology through slogans like Blue Lives Matter, a sick inversion of Black Lives Matter as though the police are an oppressed minority group. The far-right Blue Lives Matter movement uses the thin blue line symbol, portraying police as the thin line holding back the tide of people of colour, Antifa and chaos. Remember Officer Courtney Bannock, who supposedly overdosed on fentanyl? Take a look at her patches. That's the thin blue line. In the US, cops wear thin blue line patches riffing on the American flag, and creative geniuses down under have adapted it to the Australian flag. I hate to give fascist cops advice, but guys, we don't have lines across our flag. Maybe try a blue Southern Cross or something? Aside from directly opposing the Black Lives Matter movement, Blue Lives Matter is about eliciting sympathy for police and emphasising the danger that they face. As with Courtney Bannock, who was used in a bunch of sympathetic media stories falsely claiming she was in grave danger. How dangerous is policing? In the latest Australian workplace fatality figures from 2023, over the course of the year 200 people died from a workplace injury. Were police up the top? No, that's the 73 machinery operators and drivers. Then there were 53 labourers, 27 technicians and trade workers, and then 16 community and personal service workers, the category that includes but isn't only made up of police. And taking a quick look at some American stats, deaths per 100,000 workers, we find that police officers rank 22nd. Grounds maintenance workers were number 21. The most dangerous occupation was logging workers, with 111 deaths per 100,000 workers, meaning logging is almost 10 times more dangerous than being a cop. So policing is a dangerous job, but it's far less dangerous than things like construction, forestry, or driving a truck. But only the police get their thin blue line cult, blue ribbons. Here in Sydney, there's a massive wall of remembrance in the domain for the police, but there's nothing there for labourers who have died on the job. Electricians don't use the deaths of their colleagues as an excuse to kill more civilians. These fake fentanyl overdoses are so common and get so much airtime because it's the perfect piece of propaganda. Cops have a reason to lie, they have a documented history of lying in other cases, and the scientific evidence is widely available. Some people involved might be suffering from an MPI, but on the whole, this is a deliberate campaign of disinformation. Courts, politicians, and most of the public tend to take the police at their word, even though we know that they're highly incentivized to lie about evidence, fentanyl, their own misconduct, and there are usually no consequences for the police. Even when what the police are saying is laughably implausible and goes against scientific evidence, they don't tell the truth. What about the times we don't have the weight of science, and it's just the cop's word against yours? Police treat themselves like the arbiters of truth. Where I'm from, when police charge you with a crime, they present the court with a document called the facts of the case, which is just a story the police want to tell which may not be true. Our police consistently rank as the most trusted institution in society. Across the OECD, they're the most trusted institution, with 63% of survey respondents saying they trust the police, more than local or national governments, courts, or the media. It's up to 68% in Australia. Not exactly the land of convict larrikins. But we shouldn't trust the police. The lies matter. If you think a single particle of fentanyl can kill you, are you going to risk your life by trying to revive a friend who's overdosing? Or would you call an ambulance for that friend if exposing a first responder to fentanyl has been criminalised? When cops lie in court, people are wrongly convicted. When they lie about police brutality, people die. The police are held in such high regard that they have the social license to commit immense harm. I started Anticop so that we can reverse this misplaced trust in police. So Anticop is creating educational resources for people to better understand the police and tools to help you directly stand up to the cops. At anticop.com.au, you'll find in-depth articles on police history, tactics, and weapons. So if you want to know all about tear gas, for example, how to block it, and first aid, you can find that information. There are flyers on topics like de-arresting people or drug laws that you can print out and use. Check out the website, like this video, and subscribe. You can see the names of some generous Patreon supporters on screen, and if you'd like to support Anticop, click the Patreon link below. See you next time.